Let's talk about something that's not only a game changer, but, in my experience, one of the most underrated skills in life: knowing when to stop talking. I'll be honest with you, this lesson didn't come easy for me. For years, I thought that talking more meant being understood better. I believed that sharing every thought in my head made me relatable, trustworthy, or even likable. But I was wrong. And the cost of that mistake? Relationships strained, opportunities lost, and regret that stuck around longer than it needed to. You see, words are powerful, but too many of them, they can be destructive. They can drain your energy, hurt your relationships, and even rob you of the respect you've worked so hard to earn. I didn't realize this at first. I thought my constant talking made me more connected to people. I thought my over-explanations made me more credible. What I didn't see was how it pushed people away, how it diluted the impact of my words, and honestly, sometimes made me look less thoughtful than I actually was. Let me ask you this. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like you said too much? Like maybe you shared something you shouldn't have? Or you kept talking just to fill the silence? That feeling, that weight of, why did I say that? It's draining, isn't it? That's what too many words do. They create noise, not connection. They bring regret, not clarity. Here's where I want to share something that changed everything for me. Silence isn't a weakness. It's a strength. The ability to hold back, to pause, to let your words have space. This is where true confidence comes from. I've learned that silence can speak louder than the most carefully chosen words. It can protect you, build trust, and make you someone others want to listen to when you finally do speak. What's fascinating is how this idea ties back to ancient wisdom, especially Stoicism. The Stoics were brilliant at mastering their speech. They understood that silence isn't just about staying quiet. It's about using your words with purpose. They practiced restraint, not out of fear of saying the wrong thing, but because they knew the value of saying less. And when I started embracing this mindset, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Let's be real. We live in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard. Social media, endless conversations, and constant noise have made silence a lost art. But I promise you this: when you learn to say less, to choose your words carefully, and to trust the power of your presence, everything changes. You become someone others respect, someone they listen to, and most importantly, someone who feels at peace with what they say. This isn't about becoming a person of few words. It's about becoming a person whose words matter. And that shift? It's life-changing. Let's dive into why this approach can transform your relationships, your confidence, and even your mental clarity. Now that we've laid the foundation, let's talk about something that hits close to home for many of us: the habit of saying too much. If you've ever found yourself regretting words that slipped out, or feeling uneasy because someone used your words against you, then you know what I'm talking about. This isn't just about speaking out of turn. It's about how oversharing can slowly chip away at the trust in your relationships. It's subtle at first, almost unnoticeable, but the damage adds up, and before you know it, the connections you care about most are strained. I've been there myself. There were times I thought sharing everything, my struggles, my triumphs, even my private thoughts, was a way of building closeness. But the truth is, not everyone needs to know everything. The more I shared, the more vulnerable I felt, and the more I realized that some people just aren't equipped to hold space for your deepest thoughts. Words, when overused, can blur boundaries and create cracks in trust. Let me explain how this happens and, more importantly, how we can stop it. When you share too much, especially about sensitive or confidential matters, you're not just giving away information, you're giving away control. It might start with sharing a personal challenge with a friend or colleague, hoping for support. But what happens if they misunderstand or pass it along to someone else? That trust you placed in them is shaken, and your relationship begins to feel less safe. I've experienced this firsthand. I thought I was confiding in someone I trusted, only to find out they'd shared my story with others. That sting stays with you, and it's a hard lesson to learn. The problem with oversharing is that it creates emotional clutter, not only for you, but also for the person on the receiving end. When you pile too much onto someone, even unintentionally, it can overwhelm them. They might start to pull away, not because they don't care, but because they feel they can't carry everything you're unloading. And let's be honest, when that happens, it's easy to feel rejected or misunderstood. But the issue isn't always with them. Sometimes we need to ask ourselves if we're sharing for the right reasons. This is where self-control becomes essential. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned from Stoicism is to pause before speaking. When something's weighing on your mind, it's tempting to pour it out in the moment, but not every thought needs an audience. The Stoics taught that reflection, not reaction, should guide your words. If you've ever felt the urge to overshare, I want you to try something. Stop and breathe. Ask yourself, what is my goal in saying this? Will sharing this strengthen the relationship or strain it? That pause can save you from a lot of regret later. Oversharing often stems from a desire for connection, but ironically, it can have the opposite effect. When you reveal too much, especially too soon, it can make others uncomfortable or unsure of how to respond. Have you ever felt that awkward silence after sharing something deeply personal, wondering if you've said too much? I've been there, and it's not a good feeling. The lesson here isn't to close yourself off, but to learn discernment. Share what's necessary, what builds trust, not what overwhelms it. One of the most impactful changes I made was setting boundaries for myself. This meant recognizing which topics were better kept private and which could be shared without consequences. It wasn't about hiding who I was. It was about protecting what mattered most to me. I realized that the people who truly cared about me didn't need to know every detail of my life to be supportive. In fact, sharing less allowed them to focus on the things that mattered most, and our connections grew stronger as a result. Another thing to consider is how your words affect the listener. If you're constantly oversharing, people may start to see you as someone who lacks control or discretion. This can erode their trust in you, even if they don't say it outright. Think about it. If someone consistently tells you things they shouldn't, would you feel comfortable confiding in them? Probably not. The same applies in reverse. Trust is built on respect, and respect often comes from knowing when to speak and when to hold back. I've found that journaling is a great way to channel the urge to overshare. Instead of immediately turning to someone else, write it down first. It gives you space to process your thoughts without putting your relationships at risk. Many times, I've realized that what I wanted to say didn't actually need to be shared. It just needed to be acknowledged by me. Ultimately, the power of silence isn't just in holding your tongue, it's in protecting the integrity of your relationships. Every word you choose to keep for yourself strengthens the trust you have with others. It shows them that you respect the boundaries of the relationship and that you're someone who values privacy, not just your own, but theirs as well. If there's one takeaway from this, it's that speaking less doesn't mean caring less. It means caring more about the quality of your relationships, the impact of your words, and the trust you're building. This shift isn't easy, but it's worth it. And when you embrace it, you'll find that your relationships become not only stronger, but also more peaceful. Let's keep exploring how silence can transform other areas of life. When we talk about the damage caused by oversharing, it naturally leads to another subtle but equally destructive habit: talking too much in search of validation. It's something I've wrestled with myself, and the truth is, this need for approval can creep in without us even realizing it. You start with a simple statement, but before you know it, you're explaining, justifying, or overloading someone with details, all in the hope that they'll understand, approve, or affirm what you've said. It feels harmless in the moment, but the cost of constantly seeking validation through words is much heavier than we think. I can tell you this from personal experience. When you rely on others to validate your thoughts or actions, you hand over control of your peace. Every word spoken in pursuit of approval ties your sense of worth to someone else's response. It's exhausting, isn't it? And worse, it creates a cycle where you need to keep talking, keep seeking, just to feel a fleeting sense of security. That's not the life we want to live, and it's certainly not the one Stoicism teaches us to pursue. The need for external validation often stems from self-doubt. When I found myself explaining too much or talking excessively, it was because I didn't fully trust my own decisions or opinions. I wanted reassurance that I was doing the right thing or saying the right words. But here's what I've learned. No amount of external approval will ever fill the void of inner uncertainty. That's a job only self-reliance can handle, and Stoicism offers us the tools to cultivate it. One of the most powerful Stoic principles I've embraced is the idea of inner validation. Epictetus said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." I interpret this as a call to stop looking outward for approval and to start grounding myself in my own values and judgments. When you validate yourself, you're no longer chasing the fleeting approval of others. Instead, you're anchored in something far more stable, your own self-respect. But let's talk about how to break this cycle practically. The first step is awareness. Start paying attention to when you feel the urge to explain yourself or seek validation. Ask yourself, why am I saying this? Do I truly need to, or am I hoping for someone's approval? This moment of pause is where the shift begins. It's uncomfortable at first, I won't lie, but it's also incredibly liberating. The more you practice, the more you realize that you don't need to prove yourself to anyone. Another thing I've learned is the power of concise speech. When you speak with intention, you leave less room for insecurity to creep in. There's a confidence that comes from knowing you've said what you needed to say, nothing more, nothing less. Stoics believed in measured words, not to withhold, but to ensure every word carried meaning. This practice of saying less has been a game changer for me. It forces me to trust that what I've said is enough and to let go of the need for constant reassurance. One of the traps of seeking validation through words is the dependency it creates. The more you rely on others to affirm you, the harder it becomes to feel secure without their input. I've seen this play out in my own life. There were times when I felt uneasy if someone didn't respond the way I hoped, or if they didn't acknowledge something I said. It's a tough cycle to break because it feeds on itself. The more you talk for validation, the more insecure you feel, and the more you talk to fill that gap. To break free, you have to shift your focus inward. One of the Stoic exercises I practice is self-reflection at the end of each day. I ask myself, did I act in alignment with my values? Did I speak with integrity? These questions aren't about perfection, but about grounding myself in what truly matters. Over time, I've found that the more I validate myself, the less I need it from others. It's not about shutting people out, but about reclaiming the power to affirm your own worth. There's also a practical element to this. Sometimes the best way to stop seeking validation through words is simply to stay silent. When you resist the urge to explain or justify, you give yourself a chance to observe. You realize that many times the validation you're seeking isn't necessary at all. People don't need you to explain every detail. They don't need you to prove yourself. Most of the time, they respect you more when you trust yourself enough to let your words stand on their own. Let's talk about the freedom that comes from breaking this habit. When you no longer rely on words to seek approval, you free yourself from the weight of other people's opinions. You become someone who speaks with confidence, not desperation. And when you validate yourself, you also inspire others to do the same. There's a quiet strength in this that's hard to describe, but impossible to ignore. The journey to inner validation isn't always easy, but it's worth every step. When you embrace this principle, you'll find that your relationships improve, your confidence grows, and your peace becomes unshakable. And that, my friends, is the kind of life Stoicism calls us to live. Let's continue exploring how the power of silence can transform even more aspects of our lives. Now that we've explored the dangers of seeking constant validation through words, let's shift our focus to something even more powerful, the act of listening. There's something almost magical about the way silence, when paired with attentive listening, can transform the way we connect with others. I've learned this lesson through trial and error. In my earlier years, I thought speaking more was the key to being understood, respected, or even liked. But over time, I discovered something profound. The less I spoke and the more I listened, the deeper my relationships became. Listening is an art, and it's one that many of us overlook. It's not just about staying quiet while someone else speaks. True listening is about being present, absorbing what's being said, and responding in a way that shows you've genuinely understood. This is rare, and because it's rare, it's incredibly powerful. The people around you notice when you listen deeply. They feel seen, valued, and understood, and that builds a connection stronger than any amount of talking ever could. One of the first things I realized when I started listening more was how often people just want to feel heard. You don't need to have all the answers or jump in with advice. In fact, many times, the best thing you can do is simply hold space for someone to speak. I've been in situations where, instead of offering my opinion or trying to fix the problem, I just listened. And you know what happened? The other person walked away feeling lighter, more supported, and closer to me. That's the power of listening. It builds empathy, trust, and respect without you having to say a word. Listening also teaches you patience. There's a natural urge to interject or share your thoughts, especially when a topic hits close to home. But when you resist that urge, you allow the conversation to unfold in a way that benefits both you and the other person. I've learned that pausing and waiting, even for a few seconds, can reveal things I would have missed if I had spoken too soon. People often share their most important thoughts after a brief silence, and if you're too quick to respond, you might never hear them. Another thing I've noticed is how listening changes the way people perceive you. When you speak less and listen more, others start to see you as thoughtful, wise, and someone they can trust. This isn't about playing a role or manipulating perceptions. It's about genuinely valuing what others have to say. The respect you gain from being a good listener is a natural result of your actions, not a tactic. I've seen this firsthand in both personal and professional relationships. The more I listened, the more people opened up to me, sought my advice, and trusted my input when I did speak. Stoicism offers us a beautiful perspective on listening. The Stoics believed in measured speech and thoughtful silence, not as a way to avoid interaction, but as a way to deepen it. Seneca once wrote, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." This idea has stuck with me because it reminds me that not every moment calls for my voice. Sometimes the greatest contribution I can make is to simply be present and listen. One technique I've found incredibly helpful is something I like to call active stillness. When someone is speaking, I focus entirely on their words. No distractions, no formulating my response in my head, just pure attention. I nod to show I'm engaged, maintain eye contact, and occasionally repeat back key points to confirm I've understood. This might sound simple, but in practice, it's transformative. It shows the other person that their words matter and that you're truly invested in the conversation. Another practice I've adopted is asking more questions instead of making statements. Questions invite others to share more, and they also give you the chance to understand their perspective fully. Open-ended questions like, "What do you think about this?" or "How did that make you feel?" encourage deeper conversations and help you connect on a meaningful level. I've found that people appreciate this because it shows genuine curiosity rather than the need to assert your own views. Listening also gives you the gift of learning. Every conversation is an opportunity to gain new insights, whether it's about the person you're speaking to, a topic you're discussing, or even yourself. When you focus on understanding rather than responding, you absorb more and gain a broader perspective. This is especially valuable when dealing with people who have different viewpoints. Instead of debating or defending your stance, listening allows you to find common ground or at least appreciate where they're coming from. Perhaps the most rewarding part of listening is the peace it brings to your interactions. When you're not rushing to speak or worrying about what to say next, you feel more grounded and present. The pressure to perform disappears, and you can fully engage in the moment. I've experienced this countless times, and it's a feeling I wouldn't trade for anything. Listening isn't about staying silent just for the sake of it. It's about creating space for connection, understanding, and growth. When you practice this, you'll notice a profound shift in the way people respond to you and the depth of the relationships you build. And as you continue to explore the power of silence, you'll find that listening is one of the most valuable tools you can have in transforming not just your conversations, but your entire way of relating to others. Let's continue this journey and see how silence can bring even more clarity and strength into our lives. As we delve deeper into the power of silence, let's address something that's often overlooked: the impact of speaking without purpose. Listening, as we've just explored, builds respect and connection, but the flip side is equally true. Speaking too much or without thought can erode credibility and make others question your wisdom. I've learned this the hard way. There were times when I felt the need to fill every pause with words, thinking it made me more engaging or persuasive. What I didn't realize was that it was doing the opposite. When you speak without intention, people notice. Words lose their weight when they're used carelessly, and instead of commanding attention, you end up losing it. I've been in conversations where I caught myself rambling, only to see others disengage. It's not that they were rude, it's that I wasn't giving them a reason to stay invested. This was a tough pill to swallow, but it taught me one of the most valuable lessons. Purposeful speech is more powerful than endless chatter. Stoicism teaches us the importance of speaking only when necessary and ensuring our words serve a purpose. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let your words count," and this resonates deeply. Words should build, clarify, or connect, not simply fill the air. When you embrace this principle, you start to notice a shift in how people respond to you. They listen more closely, respect your input, and value your presence in the conversation. It's not about saying less to appear mysterious. It's about saying what truly matters. One of the key steps I've taken to avoid speaking without purpose is to pause before I speak. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly effective. That moment of reflection allows me to ask myself, is this adding value? Is this worth sharing? If the answer is no, I stay quiet. And you know what? That silence often speaks louder than any words could. People remember you for what you say and how you say it, not for how much you talk. Another powerful lesson I've learned is the art of brevity. Being concise doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means respecting your own time and the time of others. When you speak with clarity and precision, people pay attention. It's like cutting through the noise and delivering exactly what's needed. This is especially important in professional settings, where long-winded explanations can dilute your authority. Purposeful speech, on the other hand, builds trust and shows confidence. Purposeful speech isn't just about saying less, it's about saying the right things. One technique I use is to think of my words as tools. Each word should serve a function, whether it's to inform, inspire, or connect. When you approach conversations with this mindset, you naturally eliminate the fluff. You focus on what's essential, and that's what leaves a lasting impression. Respect is often earned through restraint. When you hold back unnecessary comments, you give your words more impact when you do speak. I've experienced this in group discussions, where staying quiet until I had something meaningful to add made my input more impactful. People listened because they knew I wasn't speaking just to be heard. I was speaking because I had something valuable to contribute. The practice of purposeful speech also extends to how you respond to others. Instead of rushing to fill every gap in conversation, take a moment to reflect on what's being said. Respond thoughtfully, not impulsively. This not only strengthens your credibility, but also shows that you value the exchange of ideas over dominating the conversation. What's fascinating is how this practice starts to shape your relationships. When people see you as someone who speaks with intention, they naturally seek your opinion. They trust your judgment because your words carry weight. This doesn't mean you need to be overly serious all the time. Humor and lightheartedness have their place. But even in those moments, speaking with purpose ensures your presence is felt and respected. The more I've embraced purposeful speech, the more I've realized its power in every aspect of life. It's not about saying less for the sake of saying less. It's about recognizing the value of your voice and using it wisely. This shift not only strengthens your relationships, but also builds your confidence. When your words matter, you feel more grounded, more intentional, and more in control of your narrative. Speaking with purpose isn't a skill you master overnight, but it's one of the most rewarding habits to cultivate. When you let go of the need to talk endlessly and focus on delivering value, you'll notice a profound difference in how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Let's continue exploring how silence and intention can transform the way we navigate the world. As we've just explored, speaking with purpose is a skill that earns respect and builds trust. But there's another layer to this we need to uncover: the emotional weight of speaking too much. If you've ever left a conversation feeling drained or replayed your words in your mind, questioning whether you said too much or said it the wrong way, you know exactly what I mean. This isn't just about how others perceive us. It's about the toll our words take on our own peace of mind. I've been there more times than I can count. There were moments when I talked endlessly, thinking I was being thorough or helpful, only to feel overwhelmed by the commitments I had made or the misunderstandings I had unintentionally created. Words, when used carelessly or excessively, can lead to stress that follows you long after the conversation is over. And the worst part: many times, that stress could have been avoided if I had just paused before speaking. One thing I've learned is that excessive talking often comes from a place of pressure. Maybe we feel the need to explain ourselves, justify our choices, or fill the silence. But in doing so, we end up committing to things we didn't mean to, or sharing more than we're comfortable with. I've had conversations where I said yes to something I wasn't ready for, just because I felt caught in the moment. Later, I'd feel trapped by my own words, wishing I could go back and choose differently. Stoicism has been a lifesaver for me in this area. One of its core teachings is the value of reflection before action, and this applies perfectly to speech. When you take a moment to reflect before speaking, you avoid the emotional fallout of over-promising, over-explaining, or oversharing. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Let each thing you say be as simple as it is necessary." This has become a guiding principle for me. When I speak with simplicity and intention, I don't just protect my peace, I also reduce the chances of misunderstandings. Another lesson I've learned is that talking too much can create unnecessary emotional clutter. Words carry weight, and the more you put out there, the more you have to carry. Misunderstandings in particular often arise from saying too much. When you explain something in 10 different ways, it opens the door for misinterpretation. I've had moments where my excessive words muddled the message instead of clarifying it. Now, I focus on saying only what needs to be said, trusting that clarity often comes from simplicity. Overcommitment is another trap of excessive talking. When you say yes too quickly or offer to help in ways you can't sustain, it creates stress that builds over time. I've learned the importance of pausing and asking myself, can I truly follow through on this before agreeing to anything? This small act of reflection has saved me from countless situations where I would have otherwise felt overwhelmed and regretful. There's also the emotional burden of regret. Those moments when you replay conversations, wishing you could take back something you said, are draining. I found myself lying awake at night, analyzing every word, and it's exhausting. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control, and one thing we can control is the way we speak. By choosing words carefully and resisting the urge to talk excessively, we protect ourselves from the endless cycle of second-guessing. Practicing measured speech doesn't just reduce emotional stress, it also creates space for peace. When you speak less, you give yourself time to think, to breathe, and to respond thoughtfully. You also give others the opportunity to step in and share, which makes conversations feel more balanced and meaningful. I've noticed that when I practice this, not only do I feel calmer, but the people around me seem more relaxed too. It's like a ripple effect of calmness, starting with your own restraint. The beauty of adopting this practice is that it doesn't require perfection, just mindfulness. There will still be moments when we say more than we intended, but even then, the awareness that comes with reflection helps us handle those situations better. Over time, speaking less and with more care becomes a natural habit, and the peace it brings is undeniable. As we continue exploring the power of silence, think about the emotional freedom that comes from speaking only when necessary. It's not just about controlling your words, it's about controlling the energy and emotional weight those words carry. Let's dive deeper into how this intentional approach can enhance our lives in even more profound ways. As we wrap this up, let me leave you with one final thought. The way we use our words shapes the way we live our lives. Talking too much isn't just about noise, it's about missed opportunities for connection, peace, and respect. Whether it's the erosion of trust, the trap of seeking validation, or the emotional toll excessive words can take, the answer lies in embracing silence, intentional speech, and the wisdom of listening. These aren't just ideas, they're practices that have transformed my life, and I know they can do the same for you. So, let's make a choice today, a choice to speak with purpose, to guard our words, and to find strength in silence. This isn't about cutting yourself off or holding back who you are. It's about amplifying the power of your voice by using it wisely. Trust me, when you do this, you'll notice the shift in your relationships, your peace of mind, and the respect others have for you. Now, I want to hear from you. What's one moment when speaking less brought more clarity, respect, or peace into your life. Or maybe you've realized how talking too much has affected you. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know your perspective and learn from your experiences. And before you go, if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Together we can explore more Stoic wisdom, practical tools, and ways to transform our lives, one intentional step at a time. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next conversation. Let's keep growing.